Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Imposter Syndrome Awareness Day. We've had a wide variety of different talks and discussions and themes throughout the day today. I'm delighted to be joined this afternoon by Brendan Whitson. He's a product management leader in the AI innovation space, so super interesting and especially to me because I'm doing a lot of work in that arena at the moment. So welcome, Brendan. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Lisa, thanks for having me, and it's really wonderful to be part of your work.
Lee, thank you so much.
Welcome.
So just to dive in a little bit, about your kind of journey to date, can you share a little bit about your background and when perhaps you first started experiencing imposter syndrome?
Yeah, sure. I had had successes up until one of my first roles out of university. And then in that role, I found myself in a situation where the company was trying to go in a new direction and hire technologists to work in a space that had previously been worked by people who were more from an industrial background. So the people on my team were already a bit like a fish out of water. And then on top of that, I don't think that we were provided the trainings that necessarily were needed to meet for that space. So the preparation made it so that we were always searching or feeling like we were in limbo. So that led to feelings of imposter syndrome as I now would know it.
Mhm. Absolutely. You also mentioned to me that you're neurodivergent, and
Mhm.
as we were saying, I myself am also neurodivergent, so I completely get how imposter syndrome and divergency sort of goes together. How would you say that being neurodivergent has influenced your own experiences with imposter syndrome?
That's a really good question. I've not crossed those streams, to be honest with you, in the past. I've always thought of them as mutually exclusive. Either I was preparing myself for a situation where I need to put in structures or ways of working in place to succeed as a neurodivergent, or I'm overcoming um, imposter syndrome. But I suppose that based on my lived experiences with being neurodivergent, I would focus on my abilities to put processes into place. That said, I know that I have this tunnel vision when I get really deep into something that I'm focused on and trying to drive towards a desired outcome. And because there's that focus, that tunnel vision, I've also essentially have blinders on and I can't see myself slipping into that limbo zone that puts you at risk for imposter syndrome.
Absolutely. Oh, you probably sort of saw me smiling because I completely get that whole thing of being so, totally focused, that hyper focus, being in that sort of zone to the exclusion of all else. Um, Totally 100% get it. And a lot of us who are neurodivergent can be very highly self-critical. I know that I certainly am and can also struggle with recognizing their own achievements. Again, that's something that I also resonate with because no matter what I do and what my achievements, are, I always think that it wasn't me that did them. They weren't meant for me. Things that come my way, weren't meant for me, etc. So, completely understand that. And how would you say that that resonates with your own experience?
Hmm. Yeah, I can definitely empathize with
Mm.
both of those situations, both hypercritical and also with challenges recognizing accomplishments, specifically because one of my superpowers as a neurodivergent is that I have great vision for where things will go in the next 3, 5, even 10 years, which is difficult in the tech space. And when you can see that far into the future and you have these long-term objectives, if things are slow going in the present, it's easy to be self-critical about the fact you're not getting there at the rate that you wanted to get there. Or it's also easy to play down your accomplishments because you're thinking about the big long-term picture, and the near-term milestones that you do hit pale in comparison to where you're trying to go. So for both of those reasons, I'm really happy that I found something called OKRs, objectives and key results, that allow me to focus myself on a near-term set of objectives and then go from there.
Absolutely. And again, another thing that I have, I don't know about yourself, is I am extremely sensitive to any form of actual or perceived rejection as well. I think there is a thing called rejection hypersensitivity, and I get very anxious around that perceived rejection as well. How would you say that you found that societal expectations or workplace norms contribute to feelings of being an imposter? And if so, how?
Yeah, survey would definitely say that I have experienced both the social and workplace norms. To be completely honest with you, I have I find that the workplace is highly transactional, right? So your near term value add is what people see, but really that leads to potential risk for imposter syndrome because we don't build a culture of belonging. And if we would spend a bit more time bringing people into the organization so that they then can start hitting those near term objectives with OKRs or other frameworks, then we would create a system where people would fall victim to things like imposter syndrome less often. And culture is one of those things. Our brains are highly attuned to spotting things that seem different. That's the reason why Homo sapiens are here and some of the other hominids are not. And our competitive advantage as a species has always been building societies. So we just need to find a way to build more inclusive societies and empower people to really live their best lives and to do their best work.
Absolutely. And moving on a little bit to coping strategies and overcoming challenges, what would you say have been some practical strategies that have helped you manage your levels of imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you asked because, I've experienced some of the things that you have mentioned in your own experience. And I mentioned already that I have found OKRs as something that I can do to hone my brain on focusing on here's where we're going to go in the next week, the next 3 months type of time period. Also, because I've lived through the good and the bad, the ups and the downs of being neurodivergent and experiencing imposter syndrome, I've developed something that I call 21st century leadership. And that is about building a culture where we're offering balance for people. Work-life balance is one example. Also, we're looking to be inclusive and we're looking to have a forum for everybody's voice to be heard. And last but not least, but very important, is also the notion of building process or ways of working frameworks for people to work within. 97 or so percent of jobs can be taught. So if you give somebody a process to succeed, then they will work hard for you. And then when you find that ambiguity outside of that, say 80% of the time that they're working, then we can escalate. Then we can call in other people to help us out. And then we can have allies on our side so that people don't end up at risk for things like imposter syndrome. And last but not least, I would highly advocate getting a life coach or a professional coach to help you, because just having somebody to talk to and to see your blind spots is really, really beneficial.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with what you said about getting that a good coach or a good life coach in place. I actually work with an amazing coach who I spoke with earlier today in a Q&A discussion. And she was absolutely fantastic in exactly like you said, being able to spot those sort of blind zones or those things that because I was so close to them, I wasn't able to see straight away. So having that other person that I could work with on that was game changing for me. Have you developed any personal coping mechanisms to deal with self-doubt and negative self-talk?
Oh, 100%. I wouldn't be here
Mm.
and I wouldn't have succeeded as far as I have if I hadn't developed some techniques. One is to reframe the conversation in my head. Negative self talk is a reality. So when you find yourself doing that, I have this really handy, awesome device. You probably have one too. It's called an iPhone or a smartphone. And there's a
Absolutely.
recording feature on there or an app for that.
Mhm.
And when I find myself doing really negative self talk, I think about what would I tell somebody who I'm mentoring, or what would my friend Karthik Sundaramurthy tell me? And then I reframe it in that way, which is more positive, and then outline next steps of things that I can do. And I'm like, let's go get it, because it's not a negative. It's just, I need to find a way to solve this problem and turn it into a positive. The other thing that I think is really important that not enough of us are doing, because we know that so many people have a vitamin D deficiency, is again, living that balanced life. Remember, we are at our root wild animals. So get out there, um, enjoy nature, and also eat a clean diet as well, because that is the way that your body is set up to work, so that you do suppress, or that you do treat the primitive brain like it's there, but then you set yourself up, because it's satisfied, to then deal with everything that we have to in our very complex modern day society.
Absolutely. And again, I totally get a lot of what you were saying there, especially around the diet, getting out in nature. Every day I go out twice a day, weather permitting, to walk my dog, and I'm really lucky to live near a river, and there's a lot of trees and green and wild animals, etc. around, and it's so great to set myself up for the day by doing that sort of first thing in the morning and then later in the day. Um, so, does your being neurodivergent, do you believe, provide any strengths or insights that have specifically helped you challenge imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I'm glad that you actually asked that, because I nearly added vision back into my response for the last one, but I realized I can't guarantee that everybody has that vision. But yes, vision, I believe, is my superpower. And I've learned to listen to my sense of vision. When I have a long term vision, it means I'm on the right track and I should invest heavily in whatever it is that I'm doing. When I'm lacking vision, I just need to get those things done and realize that maybe I need to be aware of additional opportunities or ways to solve problems. Additionally, when my vision is lacking, I need to restrain myself and take a step back so that I can see the bigger picture. And I need to ask myself, are there any red flags here for the toxicity that I've been signs of falling into limbo or imposter syndrome in the past? And if there are, I need to treat that situation like an economic negative, which means I need to figure out how can I get less of this situation, and then figure out, can I fix the current situation, or am I looking for an exit strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. On that one, I could not agree more. I've been subjected to absolutely horrific amounts of bullying and abuse, not just in the workplace and in my professional life, but in every single area of my life from as long as I can remember. Starting within the family, going through school, going through college, then in the workplace, with friendships, you name it. There's not been an area that it's not touched my life. And I do think there's a big link as well between the level of bullying and abuse that somebody experiences and the levels of imposter syndrome that they have. And I completely get about the exit strategy. I've done that so many times where it's, I can't change this situation. I can't change this person. So what's the alternative? It is that exit strategy. So again, could not agree with you more on that. Moving on a bit to have a chat about support systems and workplaces.
Mhm.
How would you say that mentors, colleagues, and friends have supported you in overcoming levels of imposter syndrome?
Mentors, colleagues, and friends have really been, without a doubt, absolutely necessary. The One of my former colleagues, Deb Fahey, was my first mentor, and she pulled me out of a bad situation and gave me framework to work within while working at Staples. And then since then, I've discovered that you need to be part of a community, and your friends and your colleagues are the community or the family essentially that you get to choose. So building that very healthy group around you is absolutely necessary. So I want to, in my recent endeavors, want to call out my friends Jack McKelpum, Josh Volmer, Stephen, um, Chris as well, a recruiter, and Bill West for their awesome contributions, as well as everybody in my JSC. I'm really glad to have that community and that strength around me for thinking innovative thoughts and staying on track.
Absolutely. And just moving on from that a little bit more, do you feel that workplaces and educational spaces are doing enough to accommodate and uplift neurodivergent individuals who might be struggling with imposter syndrome? And if so, what things do you think could be improved?
Lisa, it's a good question. I like to stay very positive, but we should
Hmm.
be very pragmatic at the same point.
Yeah.
Universities are a space that are more open, so I've not ever experienced imposter syndrome in that space.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I've not heard imposter syndrome discussed. So I think more work needs to be done there, because I certainly could see somebody who isn't does not have a personal view of themselves as an intellectual having imposter syndrome in that academic space. So I think certainly more needs to be done there, especially for what I have seen for neurodivergence in the United States, for at least the level to which I've seen academic institutions treat neurodivergence is basically whatever needs to be done to meet the minimum standards for American Civil Disabilities Act. And it got better with technology, but it hasn't always been the best. So we need to improve there. And then kicking it back to our discussion about, work and society, certainly neurodivergence, as well as I'm sure imposter syndrome, is treated as other or different in the work world. And it is a struggle to get represented. So we need to do better there as well. I think that, again, it's really about building that culture of belonging, not just inclusion and diversity, but going another step further and building a culture of belonging that I think you see a little bit more in Asia, where, for example, people represent themselves as the highly successful organizations that they belong to, and they're very, very proud of that. Whereas we're by far more individualistic in the traditional, Western cultures that we have developed.
Absolutely. And moving on to have a bit of a chat around advice and encouragement. So, what advice would you give to other neurodivergent individuals who struggle with levels of imposter syndrome?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would definitely say that first and foremost, if you're struggling with imposter syndrome, it must mean that at some point you have succeeded. You had to have been good at something, because you can't recognize yourself as an imposter or feel like a failure if you don't know what it is to win. And very much like a striker in football, you're doing your best work when you're feeling confident. So I meditate and think back to the times that you were succeeding, that you were winning, that you were confident, and ask yourself, what lessons from then can I learn that I can bring into my present situation? Additionally, as we talked about, I think that those coaches are highly important because they give you the ability to think about things objectively. Sometimes when you're living in the moment, it's hard to be objective about what you're currently dealing with. So having a third party that is objective, that isn't even your friend or your mentor, that is truly a third party and can speak to you objectively, is very important. And they can help you to solve some of those problems so that you can get back to winning ways and stacking positive habits.
Absolutely. And if you could go back and tell your younger self something about imposter syndrome, what would it be?
Well, right away, I would say get a coach. Do not consider coaching and that type of self improvement work to be hippie stuff. That your mental health is just as important as being physically active and building strong muscles. I would say that develop that. Really invest in developing your network of very healthy people that you choose as your family so that you have innovative people to talk to, people that are highly positive, that understand the things that you want in your life and will advocate for you in one way, shape, or form to stay on that healthy path. And I think that those two things are really the things that I would advocate for or suggest to people the most. If I were to talk to my younger self, right?
Absolutely. And how do you today celebrate your own achievements and acknowledge your successes?
That's another good question because you asked in a previous question,
Yeah.
do I have an issue with recognizing my accomplishments? So because I have things in place like OKRs and I have a weekly ceremony that I go through as well. I used to get champagne or really good expensive scotch when we hit our quarterly objectives or we launched a marketable product like a new version of software. These days I've curtailed the drinking for personal fitness reasons, but I still think that if you have a little thing that you can do to reward yourself, that's really good. Also, I ideally work in environments where I have unlimited PTO. I'm not sure if they have that in the UK, but a lot of tech companies do happen to have unlimited PTO these days. And if you work in a healthy culture or work culture that has unlimited PTO and you work with quarterly objectives, you can very often take a week, maybe even two, at the beginning of a period if you have recently delivered successfully at the end of the previous period. So giving yourself that little bit of space, that reward, resting yourself so that you're ready to fight for the next objectives for over the next quarter or two is also very important.
Absolutely. And we're coming to the end of our chat this afternoon, and I know that anybody listening to this will come away with some absolutely fantastic insights and some really good key takeaways and things that they can implement as well for themselves. So, as we close off, what message would you like to leave for anybody listening who is currently struggling with high levels of imposter syndrome?
Well, definitely going back to that one point that I made previously where you must have been a winner at some point. You have some sort of superpower. So remember what that is. Don't isolate yourself is a 100% situation. Something that I have recognized over time. Go out, speak to people, find out what that superpower is. It might be a blind spot of yours, find it, and then leverage it to get out of imposter syndrome. Definitely get a coach, and then take action. Don't let yourself fall into a situation where you are idle. Always take action and then see if you can measure the outcomes or the feedback from those actions, and hopefully you'll find yourself moving forward and pulling yourself out of imposter syndrome. If it doesn't correct it, then take another action and see what the results of that are. So always keep on striving to do your best.
Absolutely. What a great thing to end our chat on today. Always keep striving to do your best. I absolutely love that. Brendan, thank you so much for joining me today. I know that everybody listening will be taking away some really good key insights from our chat and your responses today. So thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Lisa, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
At all. We're coming up to the end of all the talks and content and things that we're doing today for International Imposter Syndrome, but there will be a closing talk with myself and my two co-founders, Nat Schooler and Kim Adele. So do stay tuned in for that. And I hope you've enjoyed this session with Brenda today. I know I certainly have, and look forward to seeing you for the closing session in about an hour. Thank you.